Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by TheLines.com. I'm your host, Nate Weitzer, taking on host duties for the week with Josh Lander on vacation, and I'm happy to be joined by Mo Nawara here for a second straight day. Here, 8-game slate on Thursday, and we came off a pretty good Wednesday night, 5-3 overall, 3-1 in the best bets, and got some plus money bets in there. The Lakers pulling out the win thanks to some LeBron heroics, with Luka getting the triple-double in that Mavs win. Nice payouts if you tailed any of those. We're right back to the grindstone here. Like and subscribe. Follow along. We will have videos up each and every weekday throughout the regular season. Josh will be back soon. But for now, Mo, what is your first pick for this Thursday slate?
Well, I went back to the well with the Denver Nuggets. They did come through perhaps a bit lucky yesterday in the sense of definitely thought De'Aaron Fox was going to go, ended up not going. So caught a bit of a break there. Didn't see where that closed as I wasn't at my computer when markets were closing up. But I still think the market is just not high enough on the Nuggets. It's kind of an interesting spot here because they are back-to-backing against the Heat, which are not. But the Heat are also in a bad spot in a couple of ways. So I think that mitigates this. They are on a 3rd and 4 games here. And also last game of a West Coast road trip. That's kind of traditionally a flatter spot, usually last game before you go home from these road trips. So I think it mitigates it a bit. And I also am looking at this Miami injury report. No Josh Richardson, no Kevin Love, probably no Tyler Hero. So that's affecting how I'm looking at this game in a couple of ways. Overall, I think that really, none of those players are necessarily a guy who's massively moving the needle by themselves. But when you chip away at the depth this much, and you're talking about a Nuggets team where the weak point has been the bench, right? So I think that helps the Nuggets bench quite a bit as far as they're probably not going to be exploited as much as they might normally in a matchup like this. I also like that the Nuggets were up big against the Kings. You know, I know that early on was a bit of a struggle, but they ended up 10 at half, and then they were up 25 going into the fourth. I don't think they're going to be as gassed as they might be on a lot of back-to-backs. So that helps them as well here. I know I said that about the Pelicans yesterday, and things didn't go well for them at the end, but that could have been a close game as well. You know, final couple minutes just seemed like it got out of hand in a hurry. We've also seen, when these teams matched up in the finals last year, obviously no answer for Nikola Jokic, as good as Bam is, giving up a lot of size there. Jokic should have a big game here. I mean, who does have an answer? But this line is telling me these teams are quite close. I think the Nuggets are quite a bit better than the Heat when they're on their game. So I do think -5 is a bit short.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm with you on this in the sense that I think the Nuggets are going to have their way on offense in the sense that I think both teams are tired based on the schedule. So I'll take the over. 213.5 seems like a very low number. I mean, part of that is the respect the Heat get, right? Defensively, I mean, this spread is the respect they're getting now that they're on a roll. Again, won 7 of 8, absolutely elite defensive numbers everywhere. But Nikola Jokic balls those numbers up and throws them in the trash. He's just absolutely a problem for everybody, including Bam. Has 3 triple-doubles in his last 5 regular season against the Heat. All 5 of those have gone over because the Nuggets have dragged them over, scoring 118 a game with incredible shooting splits in these 4 out of the All-Star break. They are even more incredible with their shooting right now. 123 points, 36 assists at about 100 pace. 98% of their three-pointers are off assists, and they're just moving the ball beautifully. That's how you beat the Heat. You get good looks by being patient and moving the ball around here. They score 8 more points at home, 119. And Miami gives up 116 in losses. So if you are following Mo's logic here, saying bit of a flat spot, bit of a tired spot for them at the end of this road trip, we've seen them kind of let go of the rope defensively, give up 123 all of a sudden out of the blue when they're in the middle of these hot streaks. And I think Denver Denver plus the over might hit here in terms of Denver just scoring like 118 and getting us over. What's a relatively low total? So that's pretty much the look for me. What's your second pick, Mo?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that overall because this is a spot where, I mean, two great teams, but two of the slowest teams. So I think that's kind of what's driving this total. But it is really low, man. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, my next one, I went with the Magic. Not quite as confident in this one. Looks like it's starting to go up. There was still a -6, -112, I believe, at FanDuel. That was the last -6 out of the sports books we track. Make sure you go over to thelines.com and do some line shopping. Has gone up to 6.5 most places. They are at home facing the Jazz. Utah just really seems to be in a funk, man. I mean, they're playing some really ugly basketball right now. 26th in spread differential the past 2 weeks. They just got crushed by the shorthanded Hawks. The only team they've beaten in like their past 6 games was the Spurs. I just think the Jazz are not only sputtering in the basketball sense, but I just think when like the team sells off pieces and just, you know, I think there can be a vibe at that point where everyone kind of just sees the writing on the wall where the season's going. Not always handicapping by vibes over here, but I really think when, like you saw it last year down the stretch with the Jazz, where they knew what management wanted, and it was just like it's hard to get excited, get up for these games. I think in those spots when you know where the season's headed. Scoring has been a major issue for the Jazz. I think that's obvious when you look at this roster. Just not a lot of playmaking. Putting Taylor Hendricks out there, which I think is obviously very good for the long term and necessary, right? Because like you want to see what your number 8, number 9, I can't remember exactly where he went, overall pick is going to let him develop, let him make some mistakes. But at the same time, that's not helping you win right now, which is what we're concerned with this spread. Um, you have that sort of an offense, which is lacking in playmaking, facing a Magic team that's just ridden their defense all year, right? They're fifth in defensive efficiency. I think Utah is going to probably have quite a bit of trouble scoring in this spot. Lowry Markkanen just finding a lot of bodies in his way right now. Teams not really respecting the other players on this team for good reason for the most part. And Lowry, unfortunately, while he is a great player who has done amazing work for my fantasy team the last few years, the fact of the matter is he's not a good playmaker. So when he is seeing these bodies, he's not necessarily exploiting the defense the way somebody like LeBron or Nikola Jokic, these guys who have the vision of the floor, when they are seeing extra defenders, they're not finding. Lowry's not going to be able to find shooters, and they are a bit deficient, obviously, in that department, anyways. So, yeah, I think the Magic maybe should be a bit higher. I had them -7.5, I believe, in this spot. So, not like a edge that I'm, you know, doing backflips to bet, but it was a small play for me.
Yeah, it might be down a little because Paolo's legit questionable, right? But I have faith in the Magic exactly riding their defense here. Jazz have been so awful on the road, especially offensively. Yeah, no shot creation, shooting 32% in these 4 straight road losses for them. Not even like whiffing a cover here. So I think if they lose, yeah, it should be by at least 7. If that's where the spread winds up, no problem taking the Magic here in that spot. Last one, let's go to the Atlanta Hawks playing without Trey, and really more of a fade of the Brooklyn Nets, I guess. But you get the Hawks +1.5 at Brooklyn. Brooklyn has no home court advantage whatsoever. Like maybe they're the LA Chargers of the NBA at this point. The fans are rooting for the other team as much as them. They've lost 9 of their last 12 at home, and 7 of their last 10 overall. They seem like a broken team, especially on offense, like worst numbers across the league here, averaging 99, 16 free throw attempts, 104 offensive rating. Mikal Bridges, thrust into the number 1 role, has been very disappointing all year, 97 offensive rating in this span, shooting 29% from deep. And Cam Thomas missed for the first time since November. In their last game, they scored 81 against this Orlando Magic team we're talking about. Mikal was a minus 28 with 4 points. And when you throw extra defensive attention at him, it seems he's even more in over his head. Like, I mean, he's a great number 3, probably an okay number 2. For him to be your number 1 guy, it's just not really going to work. And I mean, the Hawks, this is a classic bets, stars out, bets up situation that is an NBA model to live by at times. Trae Young, it's not to say Trae Young is a bad player or that they're long-term going to be better off without Trae, maybe the rest of the regular season, but there is an initial lift here with guys trying harder, trying to prove themselves, touching the ball more engaged on both sides of the ball. We've seen an incredible shift in their defensive performance in these first 2 without Trae. 95 defensive rating, also way more assists, better shooting from deep. Some of that is aided by playing smaller with more Jalen Johnson at the 5 even, because Okongwu's out. With DeAndre Hunter coming back, he's been excellent in his last 5, getting 21 a game. I would go back to the Jalen Johnson props here again because he's a playmaker without Trae. And, you know, he can guard Claxton if they do go small, and Claxton probably can't stick with him on the perimeter, or at least compromises the Nets' interior defense if he has to get out there on Jalen. So, I mean, the Hawks are now 4-3 without Trae, despite some pretty weak DeJounte Murray performances. You expect him to kind of take off at some point here as the primary ball handler, but their defense is going to be average at least, which instead of 30th without him out there. I mean, imagine that. You take one of the worst defenders in the league off the floor and you're okay on that end of the floor. And if you can be average against the Nets, you can apparently hold them around 100 or less. And I think the Hawks can outscore them here in what's a neutral site, basically.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I mean, I had this line about where it is, but this Nets team, if this Nets team is as broken as they look, I mean, that can't be right. But it's just weird how much do you want to give the weight to the season-long numbers. I'm with you on how the Hawks are looking without Trae. I think it's legitimate. I don't think it's bad luck, or like you even said, it's not even to say anything one way or the other about Trae as a player. Just he doesn't have any synergy with DeJounte Murray, so they both look like better players when the other one is off the floor. I like your Jalen Johnson look as well. I was considering him for player props. I didn't dive in too deep, but maybe something like over on assists or over points, rebounds, assists, something like that, because I do think he rates as one of their best playmakers right now, especially without Trae. So we could see him handling the rock, and this Nets team, it's just a disaster right now. I don't know how they fix it. I don't know if this is a new coach thing or what's going on, an adjustment period, but something seems really wrong, and I could not bet money on the Nets doing anything positive at this point until they start to show some positive momentum on the court.
Yeah, Jalen Johnson, 26.5 points, rebounds, or 4 more assists, 30 PRA. Yeah, those are great picks. We'll just make that a bonus lean here. We've been hitting him pretty consistently in player props all season. His last 3 without Trae, he's averaging 38 PRA, 21 and 11. So I would maybe think more rebounds with the Nets offense out there throwing up some clunkers, but everything should be there for him as really the 1A playmaker next to DeJounte. So that is all the time we have for you today in Best Bets. We do have player props up for you separately with 4 more picks on top of that lean. So tune in for that one. And until we see you next, happy betting.